dude. I need to get it together. They think they can do what we do, but do it better. Jive turkeys getting bread and getting cheddar. Don't get sandwiched by a real competitor. Let them up, I'm getting better. No time to be fed up. Go get us for false profits. Get stoned like Rosetta. I'm just getting started, sorry I can't let up. And even if I could, I wouldn't, cause it's a setup for the next line. Wait in line for the next time. My intellect's fine, what I find is nothing's really mine. Do whatever it takes to get better. Do whatever it takes to get better. Do whatever it takes to get better. I am better. I am whatever.
Welcome to the Starting Over podcast. I am your host, Edward Shelton, aka Dark Logos. And this is the show where we talk about the strategies, tactics, and mechanics behind the game of HeroClix. Okay, done being super serious. All right, welcome to today's show. This is Gen Con going on right now. So, anyway, I'm hoping to get this out and then another show out talking with some of our other cool people that I know who are at Gen Con. But, hey, maybe not. Okay, so quick bit of housekeeping. Still thinking on show ideas for possibly what to do with AC Realms, mainly show titles. So if you have any ideas, feel free to hit me up. Also, things are going to be getting hectic for me definitely in the month of October. So shows may be a little bit more scattered, may be more concentrated. Don't know really. All depends on my time. So without further ado, let's get into it. Today's topic is brought to you by Swat That Fly. Pretty much he sent me a wall post, and he pretty much just was saying if we could, talk about theme teams. And he wants to really just have fun building solid teams with his son before he goes off to college. And I remember an episode of Boy Meets World. And for those who are old enough to remember it, bear with me. For those who are too young to remember that show on ABC, I feel sorry for you. Also, that you never lived through Family Matters, Steve Urkel, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, In the Cosby Show, In a Different World. Great television. But definitely Boy Meets World. It was one of those shows that I really enjoyed in my youth. But going back to Boy Meets World, what happened is Corey's brother was going off to college, and he made I think Corey made the statement is that my brother is leaving and I don't know who he is. And so spending time with family so that, when you're separated, you know who each other is. I can say after hearing that, I made great efforts to make sure that my brother was aware of not just who I am in my interactions, but who I am as a person and my character. And that mattered. That mattered definitely in some of our conversations we have now. So big ups to Swat That Fly and his ever rotation of superhero characters, since he can't decide on just one in his avatar. So let's get into it. Today's topic is a little bit more complex than I first thought. And the main reason is when we look at theme teams, we have several categories of theme teams, and I'm going to break them down. We're going to touch on each category. First category that we have is pretty much generic theme teams. Second category is non-generic theme teams. Third category is comic accurate theme teams. Okay, and each of them have their own nuances. Okay, so first off, I'm not going to go over the theme team rules. You should be more than aware of it, and they're not as broke as they used to be. But before we go into categories, the first thing that you need to ask yourself is this: why am I building a theme team? And then you have to ask yourself, if I build this team, do I need map? So, and the main reason I say, like, do I need map, is because some theme teams, no matter what category they're in, need map role. Like Hydra, they need map. They can't be on Krakoa. They just can't. They die. They die so bad. You're already going uphill. Just like Batman Ally doesn't, if you're making a Gotham City team with tons of stealth, or League of Assassins team, they cannot operate on the skyscraper map. Just can't. There's not enough hindering terrain. So you need to say to yourself, does my theme team require me to have map choice? And so yes and no, and then build accordingly. If you need map control and map choice, then you need to put enough figures on there that give you enough of a dice edge. Pretty much, let's say for a 300-point game, you're looking at 4 or 5 figures. And really, I would say you're looking at about 5 figures per 300 points. And you can average that out however you want to. And that'll give you enough to sort of say, like, okay, theme team's in my advantage. At the same time, when you do something like that, that means that you're putting in a lot of cheap pieces. And so those can be liabilities later on. So you need to be able to manage your liabilities. And, like I've talked about in previous shows, you need to know what's going to die. Because something's going to die. And you need to know what you're sacrificing. And be aware of that up front. Just follow all your other basic team building things that I've talked about previously. All right. So let's go into it. Let's start off with non-generic theme teams. Non-generic theme teams have one great advantage, is that for stupid jobs that people do, they get together with other people that do that same stupid job, and they are theme team. Okay, you will pick non-generic theme team purely for min-max purposes. That's it. You want to play X figure. It has a good keyword, a good generic keyword, not very good, non-generic keywords, like you're part of Knights of Wundagore or some crap like that. Okay, and you're like, but I'm a police officer. Okay, yeah, I'm gonna be with police. But I'm definitely not going to be Knights of Wundagore. Now, again, I'm just making this up. Okay, so don't go look for some Knights of Wundagore piece with a PD ability. Or, anyway. So you're saying, like, okay, this figure has the ability to do something awesome, and break the game. So I'm going to put him on my police team. Okay, so what you're looking for then is not necessarily if you were building just to be effective of what's the cheapest that does this, what's the most efficient that does that, what has synergy with this. You ask similar questions and you say, within this keyword, what is the main theme of this keyword that I see in the pieces? The next thing you can see is what are the most commonly used figures out of this keyword. After that, then you start figuring out what your team needs and where your team is going. Okay, so you might notice Perplex is not common in a cheap scale for your keyword, for example. But there's tons of prob. Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to see, like, okay, can I get any stat mod team abilities with my generic keyword? If not so much, then is there any wild cards or any team abilities, that ATAs that I can get that will allow me to get stat mods, and then having wild cards copy stat mod team abilities. Okay, so if you can do that, mind you, then you can make up for the Perplex, and then you have all this prop. Okay, or you could say this keyword gives me tons of outwit, but it doesn't give me lots of prob. So you have to make a choice of, okay, do I just strip away all my opponent's powers, which can have its advantages, um, or do I stick with that generic theme, or do I make the sacrifice and put in prob, even though it's going to cost me 123 points? So that probber now has to prob plus attack. Okay, so you're looking at situations at generic theme team. There has to be a reason why you're going to that generic theme team, and there has to be elements that you're trying to exploit. Okay, if you can't exploit major elements in generic theme team, then there's no reason to play it whatsoever. And to just give you an example of one of my teams, that's a generic theme team. Uh, I really want you to just get a base of that. Let me give you an example of my generic theme team right here. It's a celebrity theme team. I think I may have talked about this before. It's Wonder Man from, I think it's the gravity feed of Chaos War. It's the 145.1. Moonstone, Human Torch times 2 from Secret Invasion. Edward Nygma, Bruce Wayne at 60 points. Howard the Duck. I had Infinity Gauntlet with the Reality Gem. I think it was on Moonstone, and Thunderbolts on Moonstone. Okay, the team is quite simple. You have Wonder Man as your interceptor, Human Torches with Edward Nygma as your just beat down, range fire piece. Bruce Wayne giving you some outwit protection in outwit and defend, definitely helping out those Human Torches with their energy shield deflection. Howard the Duck is just my perplex, and Moonstone can copy Hydra, which helps me lower my opponent's defense, which really helps out with my Human Torches. So when it's all said and done, my attack values are horrible, just horrible at a 10, and then it just goes down. So I looked at the advantages, and Edward Nygma allows me just to take tokens off, and so I can power up Moonstone and spin her through the gauntlet, or I can make a decision to make it so my Human Torches get that enhancement, or take tokens off my Human Torches. Wonder Man, he's just there out there by himself. He's there to punk people. That's it. And so the design of the team is moderately functional, but I realized at the same time I'm working with a tough team. I'm working with a tough keyword. But I did pick out the pieces that I did need to be effective. And definitely with Howard the Duck, wow, that's like the cheapest perplex that you can get. And if you have to be honest, like how many people have like 2 or 3 Howard the Ducks? Unless you bought like a whole bunch of Secret Invasion, you most likely don't. Okay, so with what I had and what I could cobble together, I made a pretty decent 600-point team. Got to the final round, and I just got raffle stomped by Dormammu and Namor, and what was that? Dormammu, Namor, and the mind-controlling Iron Man with a double-empowered Namor. Gosh, that was just ridiculous. I killed the Iron Man, but that was it. Namor just laughed and slaughtered my team. So, oh well. But that's just an example of my generic theme team. You can see that it has many flaws, and I'm not going to give you like my scientist team or some of my other stuff like that, because that's just a little too easy. Scientist has like everything it needs. And there are some keywords now that when you start going to Golden Age, they have everything that they need. In Modern Age, not so much, but definitely in Golden Age, they have everything that they need. So just be mindful of those keywords, and then also start looking at some keywords people might not think about, because once you start going into Golden Age, they might tap some resources that people haven't seen in a long time, or they haven't really thought about at all. Okay, let's go on to non-generic theme team. Actually, non-generic theme team. Non-generic theme team, the main reason that you're playing a non-generic theme team is because of requirement. Just pure and simple. Um, in all honesty, most of the time there is no reason to play a non-generic theme team just for the broad vastness that generic theme teams give. But if you're looking at a non-generic theme team, they're not all created equal, and it mainly comes into diversity within the keyword. If you have, let's say, League of Assassins, and there's only one ranged attacker of 5+ range out of the whole crew, then you're going to have to pack Merlin, okay? Because there's no one else that can cover your range, so you most likely will have to pack multiple Merlins, and you're going to just spray a whole bunch of cheap ninjas out. So that's one way of how you're going to solve your problem with your build. But when you have something like Avengers, too many figures to count so that you have an advantage. And then also when you start building your team, you need less of them and you get a couple more probs. But when you start adding it up, sorry, theme team probs, but when you start adding it up, not every non-generic keyword is as good as Avengers or diverse as Justice League or X-Men. You have a whole lot of teams like Teen Titans, for example, which have a lot of decent figures over all the DC HeroClix sets. But in all honesty, they really lack some major roles. And that's unfortunate. And you can build a good Teen Titans team. I know I have, but at the same time, it's not as easy as building a Justice League team. So the first thing that you have to ask yourself is, why am I playing this? Okay, but if the tournament requires it, then you want to pack a non-generic theme team that is going to give you a slight edge in synergy. Okay, so you're looking at, like I said, Avengers. You're looking at Justice League. You're looking at X-Men. You're looking, well, yeah, you're looking at X-Men. You may sometimes look at Brotherhood, but not really. Hydra is a lot better than what it used to be. Way better than what it used to be. So there's tons of different things that you can be aware of. The next thing that you have to really just sort of take a step back and look at is, what does that roster do? And you have to say to yourself, how many gimmicks does this roster give me? And then start to decide what gimmicks go together. Okay, and so let's say you have X-Men, and you can bring up X-Men, and I'm going to bring up something off the top of my head because it's going to be a really old team that for some reason is stuck in my head from Mutants and Monsters. So please bear with me on the age of what I'm about to bring up. I was building probably like a 500-point team, probably 6. I don't even know now, but I do remember the team. So someone can do magical math and tell me, what the team was, because there's probably feats involved. So yeah, if there's like dead points, there's probably feats somewhere. I had Gambit. I had the Professor X that pretty much operated like Brilliant Tactician for everybody that had its keyword. I had the Mohawk Storm. She is still good. I know the new Storm is pretty awesome, but that old Storm, oh gosh, dual target, energy explosion, range combat extra. Oh my gosh, she's still good. It's like you see an old girlfriend, and she lost a few pounds. Well, she lost a lot of weight. Put on some nice jeans, nice outfit. Yeah, it's like that. It's like that. But anyway, that Storm, I played Bishop, and that First Class X-Men Cyclops. And I'm not sure if I played Colossus or not. Anyway, but the main point of the team was just to cannon over everybody. I'm not going to lie. Bishop gave me outwit. Storm was just sat and hindering the entire time. and so did Gambit. Cyclops just got pumped because Cyclops really wasn't that good. He was filler. Oh yeah, I think I had a Jean Grey. I had a Jean Grey because she was TKing people. First Class X-Men Jean Grey, not the running room shot mind controller Jean Grey. But that team overall, its main synergy was is that they could spread out, that Professor X could get line of fire to all of them, and that they could do their job all over the map. They didn't have to stay together. And it made it so that I could cover vast areas of the battlefield, definitely with Storm. And I could get whatever stat modifications that I needed through Professor X. And he didn't have to do stupid stuff like stay inside the starting area, even though he didn't really move too often. So, oh well. Oh well. But I made up in my mind that I was going to mind control with Professor X given the opportunity, and a few times I did. But that team in and of itself, I don't know how many points it is, and someone feel free to email me. But you can see I had a plan, I had a linchpin, and I had some gimmicks. Gambit is stealth and running shot. Storm, she has like a bazillion different powers. Bishop, high attack, running shot, and outwit. TK with Marvel Girl. Fifth tier attacker with Cyclops. Just pretty much, if you could say, it's like an X-Men heal battery if you wanted to have it. So all those things together made a functional team. Now I know there's a whole lot of better, modern age and X-Men teams that you can build, definitely with figures from like the last 2 to 3 years. But that's just what comes to my mind initially. You're mainly looking for 2 to 3 gimmicks, and I want you to keep that in mind. So I'm going to give you classifications of solid gimmicks, and now note you don't need each classification, but you could have 3 of one classification and 0 of the rest. But just sort of keep these classifications in mind. Gimmick type A, offense. When I use this gimmick, my offense becomes ridiculous. Or combined with other elements, it becomes ridiculous. +1 attack to everybody that does blah. Everyone that's next to so-and-so gets +1 damage. When blah 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 is on the field, I get to running shot for 1 more square. And I know I'm just like making stuff off the top of my head, but you're looking at things that allow you to do more damage. Okay, to get in there and do more offense. After blah 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 dies, everyone gets, +2 damage on their next attack. Stuff like that. That's your offensive gimmick. Then you're looking at classification B, your defensive gimmick. A defensive gimmick is like, people are going to hate me for this one because this is old school. It's real old school. What is it? Jakeem Thunder. Jakeem Thunder on click 2 is a 19D, and then you have 2 Shadow Lasses that are adjacent to Jakeem Thunder. Now note, this is old school, and they're rookie Shadow Lasses so that they spread that 19D to the rest of the figures. And I think it was like my team. I think that's a team. Like, oh yeah, and then you had who was your attacker on that? Was it Monel? I forgot. But the main idea is like you have a power such as defend, or again, please be mindful. This is a gimmick. Defend and like everyone that's in front of the defend has probability control. So like let's say you have a 19 defend on hindering, you have high range and all your people have probability control. So if let's say your opponent does hit that 20D, you're just going to problem. You're making sure that there is no way directly for your opponent to hit that defense. Or you have powers that say Every time, such and such has 2 tokens, they cannot be hit unless that person is 6 squares away. League of Assassins team ability, best gimmick in the game. It's pretty much camouflage. Feat card. If they're adjacent to a wall or blocking terrain, they can't be attacked with ranged attacks. They can be outwitted, perplexed, all that jazz. But man, you can't shoot them, which hurts about 85% of the meta because most people don't have any figures with charge on their team. Or, well, and hypersonic speed is still a pretty good chunk, but most of the meta now is running shot, in all honesty, because we need that running shot pulse wave. Now, note, League of Assassins doesn't negate running shot pulse wave, but think about it. If you have a figure that now has to running shot pulse wave in to get a target versus them just being able to running shot, which would your opponent prefer to do? Just running shot. In all honesty, they don't want to running shot pulse wave. They want to stay as far away from that attacking figure as possible. Okay, so when we start wrapping around our gimmick B category, defense, we're looking at cool stuff that allows us to survive. That new Loki, I think he has that ability in which, like, if he rolls shape change when he gets targeted for ranged attack, the entire team can't be targeted for ranged attacks. That's a defensive gimmick. But at the same time with Loki, you have to make sure that he's in a position where your opponent has to shoot him. So there is some risk with Loki. But you need to manage that in your team building. So you either, need to make Loki a threat with his 8 range, or you need to make it so that your opponent has to target Loki, or the only one they can target is Loki. Okay, so that's our B, our defensive category. Next up we have C, our utility category. Within our utility category, we end up with such things like Edward Nygma, I take tokens off, or to an extent, what is it? The new Iron Man. The new Iron Man from the DC 10th anniversary. Not DC, Marvel 10th anniversary. Who says, you really can't do damage to me. This is a utility gimmick because, and some might say it's a defensive gimmick, and to an extent it's a little bit. But the main thing is the utility gimmick because what you've done is you've pretty much made it so that your opponent says, okay, let's say they're not playing a gauntlet, and they're playing some other relic object. What you've pretty much made your opponent do is say, all right, I can't put the relic, I can't have my big gun roll for the relic, I need to have my secondary attacker roll for the relic. You have now changed your opponent's offense, okay, because now they have to target Iron Man, and now the threat of Iron Man is minimized because the primary attacker is not affected. It's a secondary or third tier attacker. So your opponent's offense is minimized. How greatly is up to you and how you see it, but it is minimized, and so that is essential to point out. Okay, if we go to last show, I want you to go back to last show. I know that seems sort of cheap, and we'll go look at, I think it's Madame Zandu and her fortune-telling power. You're combining that with multi-attack. And you can go listen to my full comments on my other show, on I think it's the last episode. And you can see how that's utility. I missed, I'm taking a token off. But guess what? I also hit one of my attacks. But this power kicks in when this happens. Another example of utility is, Grandmaster, Manhunter. Manhunter Grandmaster, or Grandmaster Manhunter. Anyway, you know what I'm talking about. All robots get to, move 1 square for free if he attacks or does something or moves. So when you start looking at things that allow you to gain other effects, things that start removing tokens, things that start manipulating terrain, things that allow you to do things that are abnormal. That's your utility category. Okay? So a lot of people might say, well, it's well balanced if I have one of each. Yes, but it might not make a good team. I've seen some of the best teams that's been 3 utility, or 1 offense and 2 utility, or 3 defense, gimmicks going on, where you have to decide with your team, like, what do you want to focus on, where do you want to go. Okay, and that's really the core element that you have to touch on non-generic theme teams, is going in, providing a gimmick for your team, abusing that gimmick, gimmicks, and then trouncing your way through victory while maintaining solid team building mechanics, utilizing some elements of stop, but you're primarily looking at special powers to do weird, odd, and creative things. Okay? Now note, if you feel that you don't want to go into gimmick land, that's fine. If you feel like you can't manage 3 gimmicks, you can manage 1, fine. Pick your 1 gimmick. The main reason I say 3 gimmicks, definitely when we're looking at non-generic theme teams, is this. Most of the time we're looking at non-generic theme teams, it's usually a 500 plus game. So you're able to fit in more. Also, when you have 1 gimmick, your opponent can easily just shut that down. Outwit, punch that figure real hard, whatever. It's so easy to shut 1 gimmick down. When you start having multiple gimmicks, your opponent now has to make a choice of what they're going to let slide for how long. And that's something that a lot of people don't think about. They're so focused on, like, blah blah blah, attack this, blah blah blah, he has the gauntlet, blah blah blah, kill that, blah blah blah, I need to move over here and run. When we hear those things, or when we think those things, we're mainly focused on the one thing that's right in front of us, or the one thing that seems obvious. Okay, and so you don't want to make your opponent to have an easy time thinking. You want to make your opponent struggle, because if you make it obvious what your first 2 gimmicks are, and your third one is sort of a wild card. Let's take, for example, this one is sort of weird. It's Mr. Fantastic from Galactic Guardians, not the Chase, but the Super Rare, who says, if someone with the Fantastic Four team ability dies, you have roll a d6, and they get to come back. Or same with, like, Mr. Sinister, that gimmick, except Mr. Sinister can heal them because he's better. He's smarter than Reed Richards. And yes, that's antagonistic, and I hope it is. Get your goat. Anyway, going back, you have someone like Mr. Sinister or Reed Richards. Now, it's a gimmick, it's situational, but when it goes off, your opponent has to pay attention. Because now what you've done is they may have pushed, they may have put themselves at a disadvantaged position, and you've pretty much negated that. So the next thing that they have to ask themselves is, do I need to kill Sinister, or do I need to kill Mr. Fantastic before I go and kill any of the rest of the Fantastic Four or the Marauders? Okay, if I have to weed through all that stuff and focus on Sinister or Mr. Fantastic, fine, but what's that going to cost me? Because if my opponent gets lucky again and rolls a 6, definitely against Mr. Sinister, it's going to hurt. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Let's look at comic accurate teams, and they have their own different world, and I'm going to try to break this down. The one thing that I dislike is when people that play comic accurate theme teams gripe and complain and say they can't win. That's a lie of the devil. Okay? Comic accurate, exact lineup theme teams do work. What happens many times is those people forfeit their games in their mind, and they forfeit against some tactics automatically in the team building stage when they shouldn't. Okay, if your comic accurate team has 15 people on that team, and you pick the, because the points, let's say you pick 6 of them, and those 6 figures have no team synergy whatsoever, but you just think they're cool. Your enjoyment is playing them because you think they're cool. But you forfeited rounds not because you had a chance to build a solid team, but because you didn't think tactically. And that's the biggest problem that happens. The second biggest problem is being too much of a stickler on the era of that exact click. Okay, so for example, let's take Storm. If I was making a late 80s, early to mid 90s X-Men team, I would use a Storm from Mutant Mayhem, Mutants and Monsters, automatically. But if she's not the best Storm for the team, there's no problem with me using Danger Room Storm, which is a beast, or even the new GSX Storm, which is a beast, and even the one, let's say I had the 10th anniversary Storm, which is even better. I have those options, but if I say, oh no, this is late 80s to mid 90s X-Men, I have to play this version of Cyclops and this version of Storm and this version of blah blah blah, this version of Gambit. Of course your team's going to suck, because that team has no synergy. Okay, now if you have something that's like All-Star Squadron, where it's that era of Superman, then that's different. Then you say, well, I can put in an icon of Superman and that represents Superman. Well, no, it's technically not the same guy. Then you have what your next barrier in problem solving is. How are you going to face common gimmicks in the meta, or comic gimmicks that you're going to see? And that's it. Because most of the time, once you start dealing with comic accurate teams, you don't have the leverage that generic has with diversity of figures, and then you don't have the advantage that non-generic has, which is layers of gimmicks. Okay, because just because of lineup, you're stuck with a finite lineup, finite ability of powers, and finite resources on the dial. So you have to bring all that stuff back together. So once you bring it all back together, you start looking at what you do have. And then once you start focusing on what you do have, you can start making better decisions. If you notice that the common trend on your team is that, you don't have anyone that has a range larger than 4, then you have to pack multiple TK. If your team doesn't pack TK, y'all better fly. Someone on your team better fly. Or as a transporter, or does something where y'all all poof and appear. Stuff like that. You need the ability to have mobility. You need mobility. If you don't have mobility, you're going to hurt. Okay. The next thing that you need to say is, if my team is something like, not Shadow Pack, Power Packed. My team is Power Packed. Then they're good at like a 100-point game or a 200-point game. You could do some fun stuff with them, but then you have to know the scale in which your your comic accurate team works. Okay, your comic accurate team may not work at 500 points, but it will work at 600 points. Take for example, I've been working on 2 versions of Sinister's team. One that's comic accurate, and another one that's just breaking Mr. Sinister. Just, oh, okay, you get a keyword? Okay, now I get to do this and this and this, because this key's off of a keyword, blah, blah, blah. So, in my comic accurate version of Marauders, and actually it's just like mutants that were controlled by Mr. Sinister, in all honesty. Um, it was really rough because it's a fun team that I'm having at home in my my own games and stuff like that, but it's really not that powerful. And Mr. Sinister is the main attacker, but Mr. Sinister shouldn't be the main attacker. He should be like in the back manipulating stuff because he's Mr. Sinister. So I had to adjust how I played with him because everything told me, hey, I paid, let's see, 225 points for him. He should be doing blah, blah, blah. In actuality, he should probably just be sitting in the back. I put into my mind that he needs to do blah, blah, blah. If he doesn't do that, then I shouldn't be forcing him to do things that he is not good at. And so that's the next thing that you have to sort of admit. My figure, that is the main part of my force, does not do support, does not do defense, does not do high offense. You have to, but I paid, a third of my team for him, or half my team, or over half my team. So you need to know and be even more mindful with the Comic Accurate team of what you're paying for. Okay, so if you're looking at your team and after you've paid for everything in your points, and you look at them, you're like, oh man, I have no offense. Or, if this guy gets hit for one click, then pretty much I'm done. Then you need to reevaluate and then look within the lineup and see, what you can do. Also, I will say, if you're looking to make Comic Accurate teams, but, there's one guy on the team that hasn't been clicked, don't feel bad about substitutes. Really do not feel bad about substitutes. If there's an ice guy on their team and that ice guy hasn't been clicked, there's tons of ice guys. There's Icicle, there's tons of Iceman, Mr. Freeze. Which one does he act like? Just pick that guy. Oh, there's a super strength brick guy on their team. Pick that guy. Oh, pick the Thing, Hulk. Does it work like Strong Guy? Stuff like that. Oh, there's this super smart, brainy chick on the team. Does she work like Oracle? Does she work like does she provide leadership? Is she like the female Hawkeye? Is she who else is there? There was like that female leader type manipulator. Well, that's okay. That was wrong phrase. Not manipulator. Leader. Because I know Oracle, and I'm talking about in clicks. Oracle for one. Leandra, yeah, that counts. Or Maria Hill, Sharon Carter. Who's that one Afro chick? She came out in Cap. That had like the serum stuff. Anyway, I forgot her name. What does she do? So when you get it all together, and you sort of explain to people like, this is my lineup and this is my substitution because this figure hasn't been clicked, then people understand, and the whole goal is for you to have fun and then also to be able to compete and not just be rolled. Okay, now you can't be like, well, my speedster that hasn't been clicked is Nightcrawler. No, that's sort of lame. Or my speedster that hasn't been clicked is Impulse. Or my speedster that hasn't been clicked is I'm using Kid Zoom for the replacement for my speedster that hasn't been clicked. So you don't be cheap on it. Try to be a little bit more honest about why that figure's there. There's a lot of great figures. I know for a fact, like, you could just pretty much sub in like almost any Justice League figure for Squadron Supreme. You just make sure you get the right one that's correlated, and then you're dead on. For Authority, same really for Authority. Because Authority, well, actually, it's not Authority anymore. It's Stormwatch. Because Batman's Midnighter, Superman's Apollo, Engineer is technically Iron Man. Um, who is it? The little girl, it's not Jenny Sparks. Jenny Quantum is, people don't want to admit, but actually she's Scarlet Witch. When you think about it, and Hawkmoor is Captain America, even though he might not want to admit it. But Hawkmoor is Captain America, and who else is on that team? Martian Manhunter is himself. In all honesty, he's just himself. So anyway, I digress. But you could technically make a Stormwatch team. Well, new Stormwatch, like old Stormwatch. Yeah, you could make an old Stormwatch team too. There's like one chick that shot fire. You just put Firestar on there. Then, you could do Strong Guy for Fiji, and Icicle for that ice dude. Yeah, you could. So anyway, you caught me in reminiscing about old comics I used to read and question some of their political motivations. But and this is just like a side note, the sign, as Plato said, the sign of a free man is the one who is able to think and be aware of his surroundings and engage it, not just to blindly consume what is fed to him. And I find myself in comics in particular. I don't agree with most of the politics in comics, but I am able to engage it intellectually, to see what they're saying and the worldviews they're expounding. And many times it's just like, okay, you're just expounding this, but you really don't know the full extent of it. But that's a whole different separate diatribe that I will never get into on the show. Anyway, so once all said and done, the biggest thing that I feel that the Comic Accurate team has to be very aware of, and definitely if you get the judge's approval to get theme team bonuses, fine. But if not, be mindful. You need to be more so map conscious than any other team design. If you have a problem with map consciousness and just map consciousness, then you probably shouldn't be playing comic accurate teams. And let me rephrase that, you shouldn't be playing comic accurate teams for the intent of winning and getting a prize, or winning or getting in a high record, because so I have to say non-generic, but comic accurate teams require a whole lot more focus than other teams, because they lack many of the other advantages of team building, and you don't get to pick terrain, and so you just have to be very, very map aware. Okay, I really hope that this helps, and again, give big shout outs to Swat That Fly, who gave us today's topic. If you have any topic ideas, hit me up at startingoverpodcast@gmail.com. That's startingoverpodcast@gmail.com. I do help people out with teams and events and whatnot, but don't PM me and be like, blah, 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 this is going on. Build me a team. No. The whole purpose of the show is to, to make you think and to make you come back and realize you have options. I'm not here to think for you. You won't get better if I do all the work. I get better, you won't. So that pretty much negates the whole purpose of the show, doesn't it? So again, I don't have a problem helping people, but give me something to work with. And also, I will say this, like I've told some people recently, there's a point where you have to stop second guessing yourself and just, roll a hard 6 as they say in Battlestar Galactica. You just sometimes you either dump it all or you just, you ride with it. You take the hit, and you just go with the roll, and a lot of people, they have problems doing that. Okay, so just take your step back. When you send me a team, make sure you give me some preliminaries. If you can, tell me how you think. Are you a defensive player, offensive player, high gimmick player? Let me know so that we can build something for you. Because I could tell you I can build a team and I can see everything, but if you don't see everything, doesn't do me or you any good. So, yeah. So email me at startingoverpodcast@gmail.com. Hopefully I can get some more income. I was informed that my job has shifted me to on call in September. So that's not as great. So I'm trying to get my hours in. So I will have more time, but probably less money. But other opportunities hopefully will come my way. All right. That is it. Thank you for listening. I really, really, really appreciate you listening. And also, big up to Never Know Best. I ended up meeting him up at Game Cafe a couple weeks ago. Yeah, he's a pretty cool dude. And also, for full transparency, I will let people know I did not win a Thanos. I went to one game for Thanos and did not win him on my birthday. And the next game, that was the following day, I decided to spend with my family to watch Batman. And I still did not have a great day the next day. But we grow through it all. All right. Thank you for listening. And remember, we all have to start over sometime.